Good afternoon and welcome to our show here from the Wheelhouse. I'm sitting in for Captain Mark Stevenson, who's out on vacation. I'm Captain Jim Meszal, and my guest here is the lovely First Mate Lauren Barkley. And as you know, the show here is to try to educate the public about some of the opportunities in the maritime industry, answer any of your questions. Unfortunately, today we're not going to have the call-in feature working of the show. That's because there was a little bit of a change in the requirements for the people that work the phones. So, a little bit on how I got started into the maritime industry. I come from a family of policemen. My uncle had a little cottage up in Michigan, and about 100 miles outside the city. He had a rusty old rowboat. I think he didn't even have two oars. But anyways, to get them out of their hair, they said, go down, and I got on that boat, and I haven't gotten off boat since. And I run, multi-million-dollar yachts. I ride on nuclear fast-attack submarines. I've been a member of Chicago Yacht Club for 20 years, and you hear the saying all the time. Boats stand for bring out another 1,000. The happiest day a man has is when he sells his boat and all this kind of nonsense. Well, I disagree with all that. Every penny I put into my boats, every penny I spend into my yacht clubs, I've got back in enjoyment 10 times fold. So, as I went from being more of a learning boating with my own boats, which is usually a smart way to do before you start trying to running anyone else's. That was a fairly long period of time. I got my first boat, I think, when I was right out of college, about 22, and I had like 3 or 4 boats over the next 25 years, and then, getting involved with the yacht clubs, I started rubbing shoulders with a lot more heavy-duty, wealthy guys that had these multi-million-dollar yachts. And interesting thing about the boating community is it's like they don't make a big distinction about, well, my boat's bigger than your boat. It's really more about your personalities, and I made some tremendous friends that have stood the test of time, 40 years, and I love them dearly. I like them better than my own family. Anyways, but that's how I got my start. Now, I just met Lauren this season, and she struck me as being a super energetic, just over the top, all-in type of female first mate. And so then we got chatting a little bit more about how she got started. So now I'm going to let Miss Lauren tell her story.
I didn't have anything quite so formal as your education. I had a girlfriend. I was living in Humboldt Park, actually, at the time, and I had never been on a boat before. And a girlfriend went, hey, you want to go out on a lake? I said, absolutely.
Women love boats?
Yes.
They do.
And the water. I absolutely fell in love with it. My first time out. I didn't leave for 3 days, actually.
Seriously?
Seriously. And I had my first job on the water by the end of that week.
Well, you didn't have a change of clothes or anything else?
Do you need them? You got the lake.
You're right. So, now, if somehow in that short period of time, you made enough contacts, and this is important for our viewing audience. Name of the game is get on the water. You got to start somewhere. You can't start with this big formal plan. I'm going to go to school. I'm going to become a captain. Those things really work out. Just get on the water, and we'll explain to you the different ways you can get on the water, at least get a start. And so just by this interaction with this boat owner that you met, who we both know, that opened you up to a bunch of other people.
Right.
Right?
And the willingness to talk to people, actually hear their story, having the gumption to go forward and be like, hi, my name is, will get you a lot of places on the water.
So you were saying within a week you had a job on the water?
I was working with the tiki boats. I did, doing charters.
Now, and initially, now when you start out, you didn't have any credentials. You didn't have to have credentials for that, but
None.
just open mind, willingness to work, some common sense, and being trainable. Would you not agree?
Right. Being open to listen, definitely not talking back helps a lot. Something I still struggle with.
Yeah.
But being open for it, just being there, really. People who show up on time
Right.
puts you 75% ahead of everybody else.
Right. Now, so this started, what, 2 years ago?
2015.
2015. So
my first
this
year.
would have been your fourth season.
Correct.
And
Actually,
you're still friends with all the people you met along the way, right?
absolutely.
All right.
They
They
say
don't burn any bridges?
they say there's 6 degrees of separation between everybody else in the world, but I have to tell you, in the boating industry, there's 2.
I agree with you. I mean, the camaraderie is, I've never seen anything like it anywhere else. I mean, you can be, you know, in a boating situation with a guy with a multi-million-dollar yacht, and these are some of my friends, Supreme Court justices of the stadium, world-renowned orthopedic surgeons, the type of people you would never, ever cross paths with. You come down to the lakefront, everyone's crossing paths.
And you would have no idea that that's what they do on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
On the water, they look just like us.
Right. And now, I met some pretty famous people. Like I met movie stars, and it's largely through the chartering industry. We're making a jump now when I became a captain and all that kind of stuff. But
Which, if you do want to make money, do it with charters, you need to have your captain's license.
so why don't you talk a little bit about that? Because we talked about how you had your interest, all right, and then that encouraged you to go and start going down the captain's path, right?
Correct.
So let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, you've taken exams, you've taken classes, you went to a maritime school, blah, 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 blah.
Right, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. The
Okay.
first thing you need is the hours. You need to
Very well, right, yeah.
You have to have the hours on it. Depending on what license you want to go for, the lake versus an ocean-bearing one, right? You're talking about 700 something compared to the 300
Right,
that it is on the water, 300 plus.
right.
But so it takes about 3 seasons out here on the lake.
So what Lauren is referring to is what's called sea time. It's a lot like a pilot. You got to have, you keep track of your hours while you're on the water.
Correct.
And the owner, whoever you're working for, you have a sea time sheet, and they signed off on that, right?
And the size of that vessel, the tonnage that it has, determines what kind of license holding you can apply for.
Okay. So that's a good explanation why you waited, and now you started getting some sea time under your belt, and then you signed up for a maritime school to take classes, right?
I did. I went to the Chicago Maritime Association.
Okay. I went to
Highly.
a different one out of Columbia Yacht Club.
They're affiliated.
Yeah, there's different ways you can do it. I mean, we'd be here for the next 48 hours telling you all different things. We're just trying to say, here's the big overview of if you're interested and you want to get in it. The only other thing I would add to that is you better make sure that you love it, you enjoy it, because it's not for everybody. Wouldn't you agree? It's like the bug bit you right away,
Oh, yes.
bug bit me right away.
I've never been good in a formal setting, like academic-wise, things like that. It's never struck me, but as far as actively working and being a tradesperson, oh, absolutely. And it's the type of profession that you, as you're working it, earning your hours and your credentials, you're making money.
Right, right. And enjoying yourself. There's an old saying in the 7 laws of money, if you do what you enjoy, then it's not really work. And that's one of the reasons why I've always looked at, there's some people, I go on for, I got all sorts of skills and whatever, but.
That's why I'm
and
here, though.
sometimes I give it away. And people go, are you crazy? And you know what my answer is? Hey, if I won the lotto, I'd be wanting to run my own $5 million yacht. So I'll run this other guy's, and in terms of, I don't care if I get paid.
You'd rather have friends with boats as well?
Yeah, well, owning a boat it's not cheap. I mean, you got the cost of the boat, then you got insurance, then you got the summer dock fees, you got the winter storage, you got the gasoline, you got
Not to mention the wear
routine
and
maintenance.
tear.
Yeah.
Then things happen. Knowing that's one of the main things that I've gotten from my time on the water is when things happen suddenly and they go wrong. Knowing A, how to react, B, how to fix it, and C, how to make everything kosher and keep going along, and everybody enjoys the trip.
And I think you already know it. I think you're an excellent first mate. Whenever you have a group of people on a boat, and especially if it's for hire, it's just like in an airplane. The captain's got to be focused on, running the boat or flying the airplane. He can't be worrying about if the people are going crazy in the cabin. That's basically what the
First mate
the
worries
first mate
about.
does. Yeah. And I remember one of the things we would do, because some of the boats were a little bit longer,
Punty.
she would take the bow, the front, I would take the stern, and we'd be looking at each other, and we could spot anything was starting to get out of control right away.
And about 20 people between us.
Yeah, and then hand signals, whatever. Now, as we all know that, boating can be dangerous. There's a saying that I was told a long time ago, and it's the truest words I ever heard. Boating builds character. Because it can be dangerous, just like flying a plane. It's not quite as dangerous as, flying because it's a little bit more forgiving. You normally have time to get out. But this year, the drowning deaths on Lake Michigan have doubled.
The water level is so high.
Right. And you were out there when you said you thought you saw a water spout, or there were some rough winds that were coming through. And
Oh, definitely. Right at the mouth of the harbor at Monroe, actually.
yes. So safety's a big consideration.
For those who don't know, a water spout is pretty much a tornado on the water.
Yeah. Do you have a picture of that? I think you
I
had
do,
one.
actually.
All right, so let
Hold
me
on one
go to
second.
We've got a couple of slides here.
No. We had a deal. Okay.
There it is. There you go. That is a water spout. So basically, it's a tornado that instead of it coming down,
You're not at the blue one. Blue one. Instead of a tornado coming down.
oh, that one. Oh, yeah. Instead of a tornado coming down on land and tearing up trees like it normally does, it's the same principle, but instead it comes down on the water, and it is a combination of water and wind acting like an actual column.
And it will come along, take your boat, do as much damage as a normal tornado will.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go back a couple of slides.
Anyone? Yeah. What do you want to put on?
Let's see here. Yeah, let's go back up a little bit on some of those other slides you had about the harbor system. And it's, I guess,
You want
let's go back a little bit more.
What did you want to bring up to our viewers?
Just to see some of the harbor systems, the slides that you had on that.
Which portion of it, though? The school, the...
Yeah.
Oh,
Let's
yeah.
go up. Why don't we talk about can you bring up the Eastland disaster or that other video? All right.
Absolutely.
That's a good one. Okay.
Yeah, that guy. Nope, the orange one. Yeah.
I keep hitting the overhead one. That's the one I used to doing. Here's an example of what can go wrong on the water.
And now most people might not know this, but this actually happened right along Wacker Avenue in front of the Britannica building.
That's correct. It was basically between LaSalle Street and Clark Street,
Right there.
and it was in 20 feet of water, and 844 people lost their lives.
Wow.
And the boat never left the dock. Is the balancing that was off, so as the people loaded up.
It had happened or occurred shortly after the Titanic had sunk, so lifeboats had become a thing.
Right.
Except they didn't consider balancing it. They put lifeboats only on one half of the boat, and then they built a viewing platform on top of the lifeboats.
Right.
So when everybody walked over to the half of the boat to go wave goodbye,
Yeah. So
the boat.
boating principles are important. This boat, they knew it had been reported was not a safe boat. And
Notorious.
It kept pushing it. So what happened was the Titanic occurred in 1912. This happened roughly 36 months later in 1915. And the mayor at the time did not want this to get out in the news. In fact, there were newsreels down there that were shown around the country, but the mayor, he didn't have the best reputation at the time. He refused to have it shown in the movie theaters because he thought it would bring too much bad press.
Is that why nobody knows about this?
That's part of it, and probably because it was covered, preceded by the Titanic, but the Titanic was in the open ocean. You know, it sank in over a mile down deep waters, and it was over by Nova Scotia. This one, on the other hand, happened on the Chicago River in 20 feet of water. In the Titanic, they lost roughly 1,500 people. Here, they lost roughly 840 people.
I mean, that is one of the largest naval incidents out there. And the only thing that Chicagoans can compare that to is the Great Fire,
Right.
which we only lost 300 people in.
Yeah.
We lost twice as many people in this incident as the Great Fire, but everybody knows about the Great Fire.
And there's a website you can go to, the Eastland Historical Society. They have a bunch of pictures. There were actually 22 families that were wiped out because it was for a picnic for the Western Electric people. So, like, mom, dad, and the kids would go. They were going to go over to Michigan City. And then, you know,
Huge
people
business.
in the neighborhood would say, what happened to the Joneses? Because they all died. And
That's terrible.
22 families. So that's an example how dangerous it is. All right.
Things
so-
can go wrong really fast out there if you're not situationally aware.
Right. Let's take a look at another one.
I think that's why having regulations is so important. Things like the regulations that we have as captains, deckhands, the programs that we need to be a part of, like the drug testing program being one of them.
Right.
You do need to.
And here's another thing. No one got any money out of that because there's something called the Jones Act. It was the value of the vessel. So the bottom line is it went to court. No one was really held responsible. It was terrible. So let's see that other one, that video that you had up there, that one. That one. All right, so.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, on this one, I was actually there when this happened. This was down by 31st Street Harbor, and it was a brand new boat, and do you know what caused this, Miss Lauren?
No, I actually don't. It
Well,
looks
I
like
can
he got
say,
lost, let loose without a captain, though.
Well, it was a private vessel. You see the swim platform back there?
Yeah.
They had a jet ski, and again, it all goes back to balancing. And so somehow that got a little bit loose, and then we see the people jumping off.
Yeah.
A line, which is some people call a rope, came loose and it got caught in the propeller, and it seized up the engine
yes.
so that it wasn't a captain that was driving this. This was a private person.
But he lost.
Lost control. The winds were heavy, and then it went into the rocks, and this boat became a total loss. And
Got churned up against the wall till it crumbled.
it just goes to show the power of the water, the lake, and everything. So
It can be
you
very
gotta
scary.
know what you're doing.
And so many people in our community don't, though, because you don't need anything special to go out and buy a boat of your own and then start driving around on the water. You don't need to learn the rules of the road. You don't need to know that there's no brakes actually on a boat.
All right.
And who has the right of way, you versus a sailboat. Speaking of which, as a sailor, there's no such thing as a rope on a boat.
Well,
all
I just
lines.
said that for I just said that for our
Yeah.
viewing audience.
He's
All
a
right,
powerboater. I'm a sailor.
Let's see what some of those other web pages you brought up. You did an excellent job in these, by the way.
Thank you. So you were looking for instances?
Yeah, that one. All right. How about if we go to like the water spout? We saw that one. Why don't we go over to? Remember the ones about the schools?
Can we touch upon the water level real quick and the boating accidents that are happening because people don't know where the wall is? It's not like we've got coral reef here in the Great Lakes.
Right.
So the only things that you're going to hit out there, hopefully, are man-made objects. And we do have a barrier system set across the Chicago harbors that make it the harbor.
Called break walls.
And I have seen at least 5 people this season wind up on top of those break walls because the water level is so high and temperamental.
Oh, they're so well lit, right?
Especially at night.
Yeah, they're not lit.
You don't see it until you're on it if you don't know it's there.
Yeah, and they're very, very dangerous. So
it can be. People who think it's going to be easy can be dangerous.
Right. Now, the other thing we can do, if you want to get more information, you just go onto the internet and just start typing, boat shops in Chicago, boat schools in Chicago. And it's amazing what it'll bring it up. I don't know if you can do that real quick, but, oops.
No.
You got something up there. But here's another thing I'd like to talk about, too, is the history. When you become a captain, it's called the Merchant Marine. The Merchant Marine, we're not Marines, the Merchant Marine, we're actually mariners. So the mariners, together with the ships, make up the Merchant Marine. And during World War II, they had the highest casualty rate of any of the services. I wrote this article, see here, overhead, for the Chicago Yacht Club about loose lips sink ships. This is me, and this is what Merchant Marine credential looks like. But one of the things, and I can give you access to this if you wanted, but it talks about
It's very generous of you.
the casualty rates. So during the war, you had a 1 in 26 chance of you were a merchant mariner of being killed. And if you were in the Army, for example, you had a 1 in 114 chance. If you're in the Coast Guard, you had 1 in 421. So the Merchant Marine played a very critical role, and does to this day, because the Merchant Marine...
Can you distinguish which waters the Merchant Marine would be in versus the Coast Guard?
Well, the Coast Guard it's an interesting organization. It is both a law enforcement agency, and it's also a military agency when war breaks out. So what happens is their roles change. The Merchant Marine are, one of the ways I always put it, you ever see the love boat captain? He's not Navy, he's not a Marine, he's a Merchant Mariner.
So he hasn't served the country, but does it matter on the waters that they're in?
It does,
It's
because
just
when
the
you
title?
get your license, you sign up a paper whether or not you agree to be pulled into service in the event of a
So
war.
every captain signs this?
But you don't have to agree to be called in. I did.
Okay.
And you can be activated in 72 hours.
Wow.
And that's in terms of an emergency. The great highlights of my life.
Hit that pink one.
And
The pink one.
And this is the USS Illinois, which is a fast attack nuclear submarine. Remember how I started my story? I started on a little rusty, little 16-foot rowboat with a couple of oars.
All the way
I was on this last October. Cost $2.7 billion to build. It's more complicated than the space shuttle, but because I'm a member of the Navy League, and this all built on itself. And here was a picture. Oops. A picture of my letter from the captain thanking me and all that. Well, we have.
Which other one you got?
Oh, that's okay. We only got 1 minute. So I told you we'd go fast.
You did.
There's so much we could talk about. I had a whole list here. We can't get to it, but that's going to be for next week. And we're here to sort of explain to people.
How to get started in the Maritime Association, and anything from a formal education to an informal like mine, where you just kind of find your way to the water and start talking to people and you find a job. Anybody can get
Or
started.
you could go to the Merchant Marine Academy. There's 5 military academies in the U.S. The Naval Academy, at West Point, Air Force Academy, Coast Guard Academy, and also the Merchant Marine Academy. And it's free, but you have a service commitment to one of the branches. You don't have to stay in maritime. In fact, I know a guy who went to the Merchant Marine Academy and he went in the Air Force and he's the Air Force Thunderbird. So the flexibility and the opportunities are just
Endless.
endless.
Truly.
And I don't know about you, but I never get bored.
Oh, there's not a dull day. That is for sure. When you think it is, that's when things get interesting.
Yeah. So, alrighty. Well, it looks like we're going to wrap up here. And thanks for watching us. And please come back next week. We'll have the phone lines open. You'll be able to call in. And Lauren, thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Alrighty. Signing off. Bye-bye.